Uh, the one thing that I hate in anime is when you finally find what looks to be a good show and it turns out to be shit. You're watching halfway through, it has interesting characters, an interesting world, a unique theme, but you just can't ignore how cheap it feels, like your girlfriend. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I've ditched a lot of anime series halfway through. Now, there's multiple problems of why this could happen, but a big thing of it is pacing in an anime. So, in this video, we'll be going over what is pacing, how it affects anime, the difference between good and bad pacing, and why anime struggles with good pacing. So, pacing is a stylistic device that shows how fast events in a story unfold. It's sort of like the rhythm of an anime. For some reason, people like to think that the type of pacing determines whether it's good or bad. For example, slow pacing is boring and bad, or fast pacing is too fast and cheap. When in reality, both slow and fast pacing could be good if used correctly. The style of pacing should enhance the story, sort of like sex, but that's for later. So different types of pacing makes the audience feel different things. The pacing should make the viewer feel more immersed in the story. Likewise, there's nothing more than takes you out of the experience than bad pacing when it just doesn't fit the story. So there are usually guides when it comes to pacing in anime. Now, they're not set rules, but people tend to follow a similar pattern. For example, a slice of life or romance anime is going to probably have slower pacing than an action anime. Now, the reason why people like to follow this kind of same pattern in similar genres is because it has a proven track record that just works. So a great example of an anime that just knocks out fast pacing out of the ballpark is Redline! Now, the director wanted this anime to feel like a rush or thrill, something middle-aged adults desperately crave. Now, in the anime, there's fast cuts, loud, sharp sounds, lots of action, and it's super fast-paced, and this makes the viewer have no time to think. You're on the edge of the seat, and all you can do is just enjoy the experience. So let's talk about an anime that just really nails down slow pacing. So let's talk about Perfect Blue. So this anime is a psychological horror, and compared to Redline, there are a lot fewer cuts, quieter soundtrack, and a lot less movement throughout the entire movie. This gives the viewer kind of more time to think about what's going to happen in the movie and anticipate. It also kind of gives you a feeling of what would you do in the main protagonist's shoes. And they just do such a good job of pacing within this movie. All of this together kind of makes you feel more in tune of what's happening in the movie and what's happening to the protagonist in the movie, making you feel more immersed in the experience. So there are a lot of things that make pacing bad, and a couple of them are when the pacing just inconsistent and, changing the pacing when it just doesn't make sense and doesn't fit the story. So let's talk about an anime that probably had the worst pacing I've ever seen in an anime. Actually, I've probably seen worse, but we'll just talk about this one. So the honor goes to Demon King Daimao. So if you've watched it, you probably know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, well, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to talk about it. So, pacing in this anime is like your mom. It's been everywhere. It'll be really slow on irrelevant things, and then it'll rush and speed through the important things in the anime. And then when it gets to the final 4 episodes, it's like a League of Legends base race to finish off the anime as fast as they can. So, just to show an example of how bad the pacing is, at the end of episode 9 and half of episode 10, Acto learns the gods have decided Kiana was a threat and sends out Echo's clan to assassinate her. Then the leader of the Cabinet Intelligence Magic Office reveals his plan to use her to control the gods, calling her the Principle of Identity. Somehow Acto teleports there because Why the fuck not? Then Fujiko somehow gets an army of the demons and knows exactly where to show up to help Acto. The Hattori and the Teruo clan join and prepare an army to fight the Demon King. Acto summons the assistance of Peter Hausen and goes with the demon army to kill God. Now, this happened in the span of 18 minutes, which is ridiculous considering all the shit that happened and the information dump we got. What makes this hilarious is that the previous 18 minutes of this show was only about Junko failing to confess her feelings to Acto and then fighting a giant two-headed chicken. I mean, that's a big difference in pacing. There is no build up to the climax at all. They spent the same amount of time on things that weren't as important as they did on the things that define the series. It's like the production committee, when they gave the contract to the studio, they were like, all right guys, it's going to be a 24 episode series, you got time. And then later they're like, oh wait, now it's going to be a 12 episode series. And then the studio's like, NANI? And they try to cram all that material in the last 4 episodes, and it's pretty bad. Now, what makes this pacing bad is they're trying to fit the material in the amount of episodes that they have. Now, that doesn't really make for good pacing, because rather than the pacing going with the story, it's going with, you know, how many episodes they have. Not only that, it's also very inconsistent on things that just generally don't matter. Now, let's go over an anime was made pretty recently, and it has great pacing. It's called The Promised Neverland. So the pacing throughout this series was pretty consistent, and they know when to speed it up. When it gets into these like high pressured situations, it would just speed up. They also do this thing that's kind of often found in horror, where they'll make the protagonist, the pacing, like pretty slow, and then it'll show the antagonist like kind of chasing them, and then the pacing will be really fast, and they'll do hard fast cuts, and it'll make it seem like the antagonist is catching up with their protagonist, and it kind of puts you on the edge of your seat, kind of wondering, okay, are they gonna catch up? Is the protagonist gonna escape in time? What's gonna happen? And they just do a really good job at this. So there's this weird thing in anime where an anime either has really good pacing or really bad pacing, and this is because it's really hard to pull off good pacing in anime. And this is mainly because of the 2 current popular business models in Japan. So the first type of business model we're going to be talking about is seasonal anime. Now, this is like usually 12 to 24 episode series, and basically what happens here is a production committee will hire or contract a studio to make like 12 or 24 episodes. Now, it's really tough because the studio doesn't know how much material to cram in that first season, because they don't know if there's going to be a second season. So it's pretty tough, and then sometimes you'll end up getting like a Tokyo Ghoul accident where they just didn't have enough material. And what also ends up happening sometimes is that the production committee will change what the anime is like, so it gets maybe higher ratings and more Blu-ray sales. And this happened with Rosario plus Vampire, and if you know what happened and the difference between the manga and the anime, it's pretty fucking bad.
How'd we go from bouncing boobs to this crap?
They turned the anime into this like panty flashing piece of garbage that I would not recommend to anyone. So the second business model is kind of long-running anime. Now, this is a lot less popular than seasonal anime, but you'll still have a little bit. Like, this is usually shonen anime, you know, Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, Boruto, and stuff like that. And they're usually family-orientated, and their goal is to sell merchandise. They also kind of need to stay on air as long as possible, and they can't really go on hiatus. Of course, if they have to and the anime catches up with the manga too quickly and they just need a shitload of time to make the manga, they will go on hiatus, but they'll generally will just try to fill it with as much fillers as possible to keep going. Because if they get off air, well, they lose their time slot, and then their merchandise sales just go way down, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass. So then, and what happens is, in the case of One Piece, they actually slow down the pacing. They also did this in Dragon Ball Z with the fighting scenes. They'll do a lot of like, they'll just slow it down a lot just to, you know, give the manga more time. And this makes it really hard to make good pacing because they're catching up too quickly with the manga, so they can't just make the pacing they want to. So that's why it's so hard for a lot of anime to have good pacing, because they have so many restrictions. They either have to fit it into 12 episodes or 24 episodes, or they have to, keep the show, running as long as possible. So there's just so many restraints. So when you see a good show that has good pacing, it's really amazing that they were able to kind of pull this off. So that's pretty much it for this video. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Finding good anime can be a pain in the ass, especially if you don't have a Crunchyroll account. Luckily for us, there are some great anime on Amazon Prime. Ashido no Joe is known for influencing a whole genre of anime, and it even played a big role in the politics in Japan.